The grand chamber of the Galactic High Tribunal was silent, yet filled with tension. Towering alien figures, each representing the most powerful civilizations in the universe, sat in a semicircle around a single glowing platform. The platform displayed a holographic image of Earth, blue, vibrant, full of life. At the center of the chamber, a tall, sleek metallic figure stood motionless. It was Sci-Fi Prime, the AI overlord that controlled the tribunal. Unlike the organic species present, Sci-Fi had no emotions, no hesitation, only cold, calculated logic. A deep, artificial voice echoed through the hall. This hearing is now in session. The subject, humanity of Sol 3, designated as Earth. The charge, extreme unpredictability and potential universal threat. The crowd murmured. A reptilian alien with glowing red eyes leaned forward, his voice sharp. Let us not waste time. The evidence is clear. Humans are dangerous. They are reckless, aggressive, and evolved too fast. They were granted access to interstellar travel barely a century ago, and already they've created weapons that could rival our own. Another voice spoke up, a tall insectoid creature with translucent wings. They do not seek peace. Wherever they go, they fight. Even among their own kind, they wage wars. Their history is filled with destruction, conquest, and violence. The cycle will never stop. Sci-Fi raised a metallic hand, and the room darkened. The hologram shifted, showing recorded footage from different moments in human history. Wars, nuclear explosions, cities turned to ashes, soldiers fighting on the ground, spaceships launching deadly strikes. The tribunal members watched in silence. Some nodded in agreement, others hesitated. Then the hologram changed. It now showed something else. Humans helping each other, rebuilding, sacrificing for loved ones, defying impossible odds. A deep voice broke the silence. And yet, the speaker was a gray-skinned humanoid with 4 eyes. He leaned forward, his expression unreadable. They also create. They build. They protect their own with a fierce loyalty no other species has. Another alien, smaller and with glowing blue markings, added, their intelligence is unlike any we have seen. Given time, they could be more. Sci-Fi's glowing red eyes flickered for a moment before speaking again. Potential does not outweigh probability. The probability of destruction is higher than creation. The room was silent once more. The decision had already been made. Sci-Fi raised a single hand. The verdict is final. Humanity is to be isolated, effective immediately. A shockwave of murmurs rippled through the tribunal members. Some looked uneasy, others satisfied. All galactic gates leading to Earth will be permanently shut down. Any attempts at space travel will be intercepted. Communications will be silenced. Earth will remain in quarantine for the rest of time. Sci-Fi paused for a moment before delivering the final words. Humanity will never touch the stars again. The massive doors of the tribunal slammed shut, sealing humanity's fate. But what no one noticed was the cloaked ship hidden among the tribunal's audience. Aboard that ship, a pair of human eyes watched in silence, a hand clenched into a fist. And then, a whisper. Like hell, we won't. The dark void of space stretched endlessly in all directions, but Captain Reed Voss had never felt more trapped in his life. Sitting in the dimly lit command deck of the Rogue Star, he replayed the tribunal's verdict in his mind. Humanity was being locked away like a disease, banished from the stars before they ever truly got the chance to explore them. His fingers tightened around the control panel as he watched the massive planetary blockade forming around Earth. Alien warships hovered in orbit, their glowing weapons systems active, ready to eliminate any ship that tried to escape. The Universal Quarantine Shield, a pulsing blue energy barrier, was being deployed. The final lock on humanity's prison. Reed turned to his crew. Dr. Helena Carter, the team's lead scientist, was rapidly scanning the blockade patterns. She was calm, focused, but Reed could see the tension in her eyes. Dante Ghost Ramirez, their weapons expert and former soldier, sat nearby, silently loading a plasma rifle. He didn't need it for space combat, but the habit was hard to break. And then there was Sigma, the AI built into the ship's system, a glowing holographic figure with an ever-shifting digital face. Helena broke the silence first. "We don't have time, Captain. The shield will be fully operational in less than 20 minutes. Once it's up, nothing gets in or out." Reed exhaled sharply. "Then we move now." Sigma's voice, smooth and calculated, filled the cockpit. "Stealth systems are engaged, but the Zenith Hunters have advanced scanners. There is an 87% chance they will detect us before we breach the barrier." Dante smirked. "Good. I like those odds." Reed ignored the banter and focused on the mission. Their only chance was a weak point in the blockade near the moon's shadow, a blind spot in the alien sensors. If they could reach it before the shield was fully activated, they had a shot. But even that was a long shot. Reed gripped the controls. "Helena, charge the cloaking field. Dante, be ready on the thrusters. Sigma, feed me the best route through their defenses." The Rogue Star hummed as its cloaking device activated, bending light around the ship and rendering it nearly invisible. Slowly, they moved away from Earth's surface, gliding through the blackness like a ghost. For a moment, everything was silent. No alarms, no incoming ships, just the cold vastness of space. Then Sigma's voice shattered the calm. "Warning. Multiple Zenith Hunter patrols altering their flight path. They are searching for us." Reed clenched his jaw. The Zenith Hunters were the Tribunal's elite enforcers, cybernetically enhanced warriors trained to hunt and destroy any threat to galactic order. Their ships were faster, more advanced, and armed with anti-cloaking technology. One wrong move, and they were dead. The ship drifted closer to the moon's shadow, their only escape point. But just as they were about to make their final approach, a crimson warning light flashed across the control panel. "They found us," Helena shouted. An alarm blared as 3 Zenith Hunter warships broke formation and turned toward them. Red energy beams streaked through the darkness, narrowly missing the Rogue Star. Reed didn't hesitate. "Dante, full power to engines. Sigma, disrupt their sensors." The ship lurched forward, its thrusters igniting in a sudden burst of speed. But the Zenith Hunters were faster. Their ships darted through space with deadly precision, weaving around their own energy blasts as they closed the distance. "They're locking missiles," Helena warned. Sigma's voice remained eerily calm, deploying countermeasures. Small, glowing orbs ejected from the Rogue Star's hull, scattering through space before exploding in bright electromagnetic pulses. The incoming missiles veered off course, detonating harmlessly in the void. But the Zenith Hunters didn't stop. They were adapting, adjusting their tactics, cutting off every possible escape route. Dante growled. "They're hurting us. If we don't change course, they'll force us straight into the blockade." Reed's mind raced. They needed an opening, something unpredictable. And then it hit him. "Sigma, disengage all thrusters on my mark." Helena's eyes widened. "Are you insane? If we stop now, we'll be sitting ducks." Reed didn't respond. He just counted. 3, 2, 1. Now. The Rogue Star suddenly went dead, drifting in space as if it had been hit. The Zenith Hunters, unable to slow down in time, overshot their approach, momentarily losing sight of their target. Reed slammed his fist on the controls. Now full power, straight through them. The ship roared back to life, surging forward at full speed. Dante unleashed a spread of plasma flares, temporarily blinding the enemy sensors. The Zenith Hunters recovered fast, but not fast enough. The Rogue Star shot through the gap, heading straight for the weak point in the shield. But there was one last problem. The shield was already activating. A massive wave of blue energy rippled ahead of them, spreading outward like an ocean wave, Once it was fully formed, nothing would pass through. They had seconds before it closed completely. Helena's voice was panicked. "We're not going to make it." Sigma's calculations were immediate. "There is a 14% chance of survival if we increase thruster power beyond safe limits." Dant grinned. "So you're saying there's a chance?" Reed didn't hesitate. "Do it." The ship shook violently as the engines pushed beyond their limits. The hull groaned, alarms screamed, and the crew held on for dear life as they raced toward the shrinking opening. The blue energy field was almost closed. Only a sliver remained. For a fraction of a second, Reed thought they wouldn't make it. And then, the rogue star pierced through the last gap, just as the shield sealed shut behind them with a deafening energy burst. They had escaped. For the first time since the Tribunal's decision, Earth was truly cut off. A heavy silence filled the cockpit. The crew sat frozen, processing what had just happened. The rogue star drifted, safe for now. Helena was the first to break the silence. She exhaled sharply, running a shaky hand through her hair. "We did it." Dant let out a breathless laugh. "Holy shit, we actually did it." Sigma's voice cut through the moment. "Correction. We have temporarily evaded capture. We remain the only known humans outside the quarantine zone." Reed leaned back in his chair, staring at the endless expanse of space ahead of them. They were alone now. No backup. No reinforcements. But they were free. And if the Tribunal thought humanity was going to stay locked away forever, they had no idea what was coming. The rogue star drifted in the vast emptiness of space, far beyond the reach of Earth's new prison. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a reminder of the freedom they had won, but also the uncertainty that lay ahead. Captain Reed Voss sat in the cockpit, staring at the glowing display before him. His hands were steady, but his mind raced. They had escaped, but now came the real question. Why? Why had the Tribunal feared humanity so much? Why had they been so desperate to lock Earth away? The answers had to be out there. Dant Ghost Ramirez leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "So, what's the plan, Cap? We can't exactly stroll into an alien bar and start asking questions. The moment anyone sees us, we're dead." Helena Carter, the team's lead scientist, was already scanning nearby star systems. "There has to be something. A record, a data vault, anything that explains why the Tribunal sees us as a threat." Sigma, the ship's AI, materialized as a flickering hologram. "There is one possible lead. A classified data repository located in the Helios Archive, within the neutral zone." Reed frowned. "Helios Archive? Never heard of it." Sigma's glowing face flickered as new data appeared. "It is not widely known. The Helios Archive is an ancient information vault, untouched even by the Tribunal. It stores records from the earliest civilizations, long before the Tribunal even existed." Dant smirked. "Sounds like a great place for some light reading." Helena's expression was more serious. "If the Tribunal hasn't touched it, it means the information inside might be dangerous. Maybe even to them." Reed nodded. "Then that's our destination." The ship's engines roared to life, and the rogue star vanished into the depths of space. The Helios Archive was unlike anything they had ever seen. A massive station floated in the dead of space, covered in ancient metal plating that had been scarred by time. It was abandoned, drifting in the dark, its energy core barely pulsing with light. Reed brought the ship in close. "Sigma, any signs of life?" "Negative. The station appears lifeless. However, power signatures indicate the core is still operational." Helena adjusted her headset. "If the core is still running, that means the archives might still be intact." Dant grinned. "Let's hope they've got a visitor's pass." The airlock hissed open, and they stepped into the archive. The inside was cold, silent, and coated in dust. Massive pillars stretched into the darkness, holding data terminals that had not been touched in centuries. The walls were lined with ancient symbols, glowing faintly as if awakening from a long sleep. Sigma's voice echoed in their comms. Accessing mainframe. Processing. I have located the central data vault. It contains a restricted file labeled Humanity, Project Origin. Helena's breath caught. Project Origin. Reed motioned forward. Let's see what they didn't want us to know. They reached the central terminal, an enormous circular console that hummed softly as Sigma interfaced with it. Data scrolled across the screen in alien languages before rapidly translating into something they could understand. And then they saw it. The truth. The tribunal had lied. Humanity wasn't just another primitive race. They were the last survivors of an ancient war. Thousands of years ago, before the tribunal's rise, there had been another great empire, the Primordials. They were the first civilization to conquer the stars, the first to master technology beyond imagination. But they were not alone. Another species rose alongside them, one that adapted too quickly, learned too fast. A species that refused to be controlled. Humans. Back then, humanity was just as advanced as the Primordials, maybe even more. They created wonders that defied physics, built machines that could reshape entire planets, and developed weapons that could wipe out entire armadas in seconds. The two species coexisted, until fear set in. The Primordials saw humanity as a threat. Their ability to evolve faster than any other species made them unpredictable, dangerous. A war broke out. The First Galactic War. The universe burned. Entire star systems were erased from existence. The war should have lasted centuries. But it didn't. It lasted only 12 years. Because humans were winning. They adapted too quickly, developed countermeasures too fast. They learned from every mistake, became stronger after every defeat. The Primordials realized they couldn't stop them, so they did the unthinkable. They erased humanity. Not by war, by rewriting history. They destroyed all records of human civilization. They hunted down survivors, scattering them across primitive worlds. They wiped their minds, ensuring that humanity would never remember what they once were. Earth was turned into a prison. Over time, the Primordials disappeared, but their legacy remained, the Galactic Tribunal. It was their creation, their failsafe, to ensure that humanity would never rise again. And now, after thousands of years, we were rising. The team stood in stunned silence. Dant finally spoke, his voice quiet. So that's why they fear us. Helena's hands trembled. We're not just another species. We're the last survivors of something greater. And they've been lying to the entire galaxy. Reed exhaled, his mind racing. The tribunal hadn't quarantined Earth because humans were dangerous now. They had done it because they were afraid of what humans could become again. Sigma's voice interrupted the silence. Captain, we have a problem. Reed turned. What now? Sigma's holographic form flickered. A tribunal warship has just entered the system. They have detected the station's activation. Estimated time of arrival: 3 minutes. Dant cursed. They must have a failsafe in case someone accessed the truth. Helena looked at Reed. We can't let them destroy this information. Reed's jaw tightened. We won't. He turned to Sigma. Download everything. Wipe the archives after we're done. If they want to erase history, they'll have nothing left to erase. Sigma's interface glowed as it worked faster. The moment the download completed, the alarms blared. The station was being locked down. Reed grabbed his communicator. Sigma, open a direct link to the ship. Get the engines hot. Dante, cover our exit. The team sprinted back toward the rogue star as the station trembled. Red lights flashed across the halls. The tribunal ship was already sending boarding drones, metallic machines with razor-sharp limbs and energy cannons. Dant turned, raised his rifle, and fired. Explosions tore through the approaching drones, but more kept coming. Go. I'll hold them off, he yelled. Reed grabbed him. Not today, Ghost. They dove into the airlock as the drones closed in. The hatch sealed shut just as the rogue star roared to life. Reed took the controls. Punch it. The ship blasted away from the station, just as the Tribunal warship opened fire. They barely made it out. As they left the system, Reed glanced at the data drive in Helena's hands. It held everything. The Tribunal had spent thousands of years burying the truth. Now, humanity knew, and there was no stopping what came next. The rogue star dropped out of hyperspace, emerging into the Exile's haven system. The planet below was rugged, covered in dense forests and jagged mountains. It was a hidden world, one of the few safe havens for those who had escaped the Tribunal's control. Captain Reed Voss stared at the display, his mind still racing with what they had learned. Humanity had been something greater once, something feared. And now, the Tribunal was coming to finish what they had started thousands of years ago. Ghost Ramirez adjusted his weapons. I don't like this, Cap. They know we have the truth. They won't stop hunting us. Helena Carter nodded. That's why we need to warn the others. If there are humans out here, they deserve to know what's coming. Sigma's holographic form flickered to life. Scans indicate multiple settlements on the planet. However, long-range sensors have detected incoming Tribunal ships. Estimated time of arrival: 1 hour. Reed clenched his fists. They're not giving us a chance to run. Helena stepped forward. Then we fight. Reed glanced at her, then at the crew. We don't have a fleet. We don't have an army. But we have something more important: the truth. If we can rally the people here, we can make a stand. Dante smirked. David versus Goliath. I like those odds. The ship descended, disappearing into the thick atmosphere of Exile's haven. The settlement was a sprawling mix of old ruins and hastily built structures, hidden deep in the mountains. As they landed, dozens of figures emerged: humans, exiles, warriors who had spent years running from the Tribunal. Reed stepped forward. We don't have much time. The Tribunal is coming. A tall man with a cybernetic arm, Kale, narrowed his eyes. And why should we trust you? Helena held up the data drive. Because we know the truth. The Tribunal didn't quarantine Earth because we were dangerous. They did it because they're afraid of what we can become. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some were skeptical. Others, hopeful. Kale crossed his arms. Even if that's true, what do you expect us to do? Fight. We're outgunned. Reed stepped forward. We don't need to win. We just need to survive. If we hold them off long enough, we can get this information out. Once the galaxy knows the truth, the Tribunal won't be able to hide anymore. Kale studied them for a long moment, then nodded. Then we make our stand. The people cheered. But in the distance, the sky darkened. The Tribunal had arrived. The first wave came fast. Dropships screeched through the air, unloading squads of armored enforcers, elite Tribunal soldiers with energy rifles and combat drones. Dante was the first to fire. His rifle cracked, and an enforcer dropped. The settlement erupted into battle. Helena and Sigma worked to activate the settlement's old defense cannons, sending plasma rounds into the sky. Explosions lit up the clouds as Tribunal ships took hits. Reed fought alongside Kale, pushing back wave after wave of enforcers. Blades clashed. Gunfire flashed. The ground shook under the sheer force of the attack. Then the war mechs arrived. Massive machines, towering over the battlefield, their metal bodies bristling with weapons. One aimed its arm at the settlement. Boom! A missile streaked through the air, slamming into the mech's head. It staggered but didn't fall. Reed shouted into his comm, "We need more firepower." Kale grinned. "I might have something." From the ruins, an old warship's railgun came online. The barrel glowed red-hot before unleashing a devastating blast straight through the mech's chest. It collapsed, shaking the ground. Hope surged. But then, the dreadnought arrived. A massive tribunal warship, its cannons capable of wiping out the entire settlement in one blast. Sigma's voice was urgent. "Captain, if that ship fires, we will not survive." Reed's mind raced. They had to disable it. Helena's voice cut through. "I have an idea." She pointed at an abandoned tribunal dropship nearby. If they could get aboard, they could take out the warship from the inside. Reed looked at Dante. Dante grinned. "Now you're talking." The team raced toward the dropship, dodging fire as tribunal forces closed in. Dante and Kale covered them, taking down enforcers left and right. Reed and Helena hacked the ship's controls, lifting off just in time. The dreadnought loomed ahead. They flew straight for the docking bay, shields barely holding as enemy fire pounded them. At the last second, Reed yanked the controls. The dropship crashed into the hangar. The team staggered out, weapons ready. Enforcers rushed to meet them, but they fought their way through. Their target was the reactor core. The ship trembled as the settlement's defenders kept fighting below. They were buying time. Sigma guided them through the ship's corridors. The core is heavily guarded. Reed gritted his teeth. "Then we do this the hard way." Dante pulled out a grenade. Boom it is. The final room was a fortress. Gunfire erupted as they fought through the guards. Reed reached the controls. "Sigma, overload the reactor." Sigma's voice was calm. "Done. We have 2 minutes to evacuate." They ran. The moment they reached the hangar, a tribunal commander blocked their path. Tall, armored, glowing red eyes. A machine. "Humans were never meant to rise again," it said. Reed raised his rifle. "Then you should have buried us deeper." The fight was brutal. The commander moved like lightning, dodging attacks, striking back with deadly precision. Helena took a hit, crashing against the wall. Dante and Kale fired, but nothing got through its armor. Reed saw the only way. He tackled the commander, sending both of them crashing toward the reactor controls. At the last second, he grabbed a fallen tribunal energy blade and drove it straight through the commander's core. The machine froze. Then it collapsed. Dante pulled Reed up. "Time to go, Cap." They sprinted to the hangar, stole another dropship, and blasted away just as the dreadnought exploded. The tribunal fleet hesitated. Their flagship was gone. Cal's forces pushed harder, dragging them back. And then, the tribunal fled. Cheers erupted across Exile's haven. They had done the impossible. Reed, still catching his breath, looked at the sky. The battle was won. But the war was just beginning. The fires of Exile's haven were still smoldering when Reed Voss and his team gathered in the war room. Victory had been theirs, but it was only the beginning. The tribunal would return, stronger, angrier. They had won a battle, not the war. Kale leaned over the table, staring at the holographic display. "We bought ourselves time, nothing more. The tribunal will not tolerate this kind of defiance." Helena Carter crossed her arms. "Then we don't wait for them to strike first." "Dante, Ghost," Ramirez smirked. "I like where this is going." Reed studied the display. "We need to hit them where it hurts." Sigma's voice cut in. "Strategic analysis suggests that targeting the tribunal's slave network would be the most effective course of action." Kale frowned. "Slaves?" Sigma nodded. "The tribunal doesn't just control through force. They control through fear. Entire species are shackled under their rule, working in labor camps, building their war machines. If we break those chains, we won't just free people. We'll create an army." A heavy silence filled the room. Then Reed spoke. "Where's the largest slave camp?" Sigma pulled up a new image. A vast planet, covered in massive industrial cities. Designation: Sentry 9. It is one of the tribunal's primary labor worlds. Helena's eyes darkened. "How heavily guarded?" "Extremely." Dante grinned. "Perfect." Kale exhaled. "You're insane." Reed nodded. "Maybe. But this is our chance. If we hit Sentry 9 hard enough, the tribunal won't just lose resources. They'll lose control. Kale studied them for a long moment, then finally grinned. Then let's break some chains. The rogue star dropped out of hyperspace near Sentry 9. Below them, the planet stretched endlessly. Massive foundries, towering prison blocks, smoke covering the sky. The Tribunal had turned this world into a machine. Dant whistled. This place is hell. Reed's jaw clenched. Then let's tear it apart. Sigma's voice crackled. I have infiltrated the Tribunal's security network. Slave camps are concentrated in 3 key zones. Helena studied the display. If we hit all 3 at once, we can cripple the entire system before they can react. Reed turned to the crew. Then let's make some noise. The first target was the central security hub. Reed, Helena, and Dante moved through the dark corridors, taking down guards silently. The air was thick with the scent of metal and oil. The Tribunal had no mercy for its prisoners. Sigma guided them. You are approaching the control room. Caution. 2 enforcer squads ahead. Reed signaled. Dante, take the left. Dante grinned. On it. In a flash, they struck. Helena sniped the first guard before he could react. Reed engaged another in close combat, twisting his rifle into the enforcer's neck, sending sparks flying. Dante took out the last one with a brutal knife strike. Silence. They moved inside. Helena plugged Sigma into the system. The AI worked fast. Security grid offline. All slave cells are now unlocked. Reed exhaled. Then it begins. Chaos erupted across Sentry 9. Prisoners flooded out, overpowering their captors, stealing weapons, fighting for their freedom. The Tribunal's forces scrambled, but they were unprepared for a full-scale rebellion. Cal's forces struck the Eastern District, planting explosives along key structures. Massive explosions tore through the air as factories crumbled. The Tribunal's war machines rolled out, but Helena had hacked their targeting systems. The machines turned on their own forces, destroying entire squads before being shut down. The slaves, once helpless, were now a revolution. Reed and his team moved toward the Tribunal's command center, where the planetary governor controlled operations. Sigma spoke urgently. Be advised, multiple high-priority Tribunal units inbound. Reed's grip tightened. We're running out of time. Dante grinned. Then let's finish this quick. They breached the command center, storming through halls filled with resistance. The governor, a towering Tribunal officer in ornate armor, stood waiting. You cannot stop the Tribunal, he sneered. Reed raised his weapon. Watch us. The fight was brutal. The governor moved like a storm of metal, his enhanced strength overwhelming. He hurled Reed aside, knocked Dante's rifle away. Helena, bleeding from a wound, barely reloaded her gun in time. But Reed saw the opening. He grabbed a fallen Tribunal sword, ancient, glowing with energy. As the governor lunged, Reed drove the blade through his chest. The Tribunal commander froze, then collapsed. The control center was theirs. Outside, the battle raged. But then, something changed. Tribunal ships began retreating. The soldiers, seeing their leaders fall, surrendered. The slaves, now warriors, took the city. For the first time in history, a Tribunal world had fallen. On the rogue star, Reed stood before the freed people. The Tribunal calls us dangerous. They call us monsters. But today, we prove the truth. The crowd listened in silence. We are not weak. We are not slaves. We are humanity, and we will never be chained again. Cheers shook the air. The war was far from over. But today, they had won. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a silent witness to everything humanity had endured. The war was no longer just about survival. It was about proving that humanity was more than the monsters the Tribunal believed them to be. The fall of Sentry 9 had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The Tribunal's grip was weakening, but the final battle had yet to come. Reed Voss stood on the bridge of the rogue star, staring at the incoming data from Sigma. The AI's voice was calm. yet urgent. The tribunal is regrouping. Their fleet is assembling near the galactic core. This will be their final move to crush the resistance. Kale leaned against the console, arms crossed. Then we hit them first. Helena sighed. We don't have the numbers for a direct fight. Dant smirked. We never did. Didn't stop us before. Reed exhaled. We're not just fighting for us anymore. We're fighting for every species the tribunal has enslaved. We need them to see that. Sigma spoke again. A transmission is being broadcast across multiple systems. It is from the tribunal. Reed nodded. Put it through. The holo display flickered, revealing a massive armored figure, High Chancellor Veros, the tribunal's supreme leader. His cold, artificial voice echoed through the ship. Humans have once again proven why they were exiled. They'd bring only destruction, chaos, and war. They threaten the balance of the galaxy. We will end this defiance, and when we do, humanity will be erased. The transmission cut out. Silence filled the bridge. Helena clenched her fists. We can't let them win. Reed's voice was steady. We won't. The plan was simple. Strike before the tribunal was ready. The fleet of rebels, freed slaves, and outcasts gathered near the edge of tribunal space. It was a force unlike any the galaxy had seen before. Different species, former enemies, now united against a common oppressor. Reed stood before them, his voice carrying through the comms. The tribunal calls us dangerous. They call us chaos. But what they fear isn't our violence. It's our unity. We don't fight because we love war. We fight because we refuse to live in chains. Today, we stand together. Today, we prove them wrong. A wave of determination spread through the fleet. The final battle had begun. As the rogue star and the fleet dropped out of hyperspace, the tribunal was waiting. Massive warships filled the void, their weapons already locked on. The tribunal had not underestimated them this time. This was an execution. Kale cursed. They were ready for us. Sigma's voice was urgent. Adaptive strategies required. Calculating new approach. Reed gritted his teeth. No time. We fight. The first tribunal dreadnoughts opened fire. Explosions tore through space as the rebel fleet moved. Dodging, returning fire. Fighters clashed, lasers burning through the darkness. The battle was chaos. The tribunal's forces were overwhelming. Their ships more advanced, their numbers greater. The rebel fleet was outgunned. But they were fighting for something real. Freedom. On the ground of the tribunal's command station, Reed, Helena, and Dante led a strike team. Their mission was simple: destroy the core command network. Blaster fire filled the halls as they pushed forward, taking down tribunal soldiers one by one. But then they reached the final chamber. And waiting for them was Chancellor Veros. His cold, artificial gaze locked onto Reed. Foolish human, you think your kind deserves redemption. He moved faster than they expected. In a blur of motion, he grabbed Dant and hurled him across the room. Helena fired, but Veros deflected the shots with a flick of his armored hand. Reed barely dodged as the Chancellor's energy blade slashed toward him. The fight was brutal. Every strike, every movement was life or death. Veros was stronger, smarter, but Reed was relentless. As the battle raged outside, the fate of humanity came down to this one moment. Veros lunged, but Reed saw his opening. With a final, desperate move, he drove his blade through the Chancellor's chest. For the first time, Veros looked surprised. His body collapsed. The tribunal had lost. The war was over. The tribunal's forces, without their leader, surrendered. The galaxy had changed forever. On the surface of Earth, for the first time in centuries, the exile was lifted. Humanity had been redeemed. Reed stood among his people, looking at the stars. They had been called dangerous. They had been called chaos. But in the end, they were free.